our friend Tafka, the gentleman formerly known as the Prince of Soccer. So here's what Tafka brought to the table this morning, and I'm going to ask you guys this. Can the status quo of Major League Soccer and USL endure for more than 10 years? Or is it some kind of considerable upheaval in the future, be it a merger of leagues, creation of ProRail by USL, forcing MLS to follow suit in some way, some form of formalized cooperation between the leagues, etc.? Will the USL and Major League Soccer look largely like they do now by 2035? Kaylor, since you are in chaos, I will have you answer first. Phil can save his answer and build off of yours.
I would say they've already worked together, considering the fact that they've had teams in the past like USL or MLS2 teams in USL, and I think there's a couple like Portland has their PDL League Two team, so I guess that kind of counts. But in all reality, I no. If things stay the way they are now, no, they're not, and a big part of that is if things don't change, think about who is the head of the snake for USL now. Someone who was, cast away from MLS and given a suspension for doing what David Beckham's doing now. Anyway, like I just if all leadership stays the same, I would say no, that it's so hard to imagine a reconciliation or any kind of conciliation, I guess, at all. I just don't see it joining in its current state. That said, I could see USL really making a push because Super League's going Division One, which means USL has D1 aspirations. And if we get a true butting of heads, I think we that's the only way that we could see anything, or it could just become one of those who has more money and whoever wins doesn't die.
Okay, so is he anywhere close, Phil?
It's a really good question. I guess my gut goes to the fact that the more that MLS target current USL markets for expansion, the less likely the reconciliation becomes because USL is going to have to fight for relevance in some way. And if it comes down to them pursuing D1 on the men's side like they have on the women's, or if it comes down to promotion and relegation and trying to, petition for like D1 status, that sort of stuff, I think ultimately USL's road to continued relevance over the next 10 years probably butts up against MLS's plans for their expansion in both the D1 and lower division spaces. So yeah, I don't know that there's a way forward for USL. I mean, I think maybe a merger would be the only possible way that involves like bringing in whatever pyramid USL have established by then. But yeah, aside from that, it does seem like the leagues are just sort of diametrically opposed now at the moment.
So then, Kaylor, let me ask you this: the way that I talked about it before you and Phil came on was basically the notion of, hey, can't we all just get along? You do your thing, I'll do my thing. We'll stay in our own lanes. We'll build, even if we have multiple franchises, if we have the leagues represented by multiple leagues in the same city. You find your folks, we'll find our folks. You might have crossover. You might have respect and admiration across the aisle, but don't worry about it. Why can't we all just get along? That's how I'm viewing this when it comes to the growth of both of these entities, so they both can flourish in the long term.
Because, and listen, as much as we in the USL, shake our fist at the powers above us and say, we hate you, we don't like you, big corporation, USL can't play friendly either. There's a reason that Chattanooga is in MLS Next Pro and not USL, and it's because there's a money-hungry owner who's blocked them in Chattanooga entirely. The USL can't play friendly either. And as much as I would love to say, if USL or if MLS got it together, it would take everybody pretty much unifying. And frankly, I don't think there could be any kind of friendly, let's just all get along, unless the federation steps in and says you have to be friendly.
So, Phil, it's like you stay in your corner and you stay in your corner and y'all don't come to the middle of the ring here?
Yeah, I think the tough part right now is just the practicality of, like we saw in San Diego, the likelihood of a USL team getting a stadium deal once MLS comes to town is really slim. Sponsors go the way of MLS. It is a little bit of a zero-sum game right now, it seems, in certain markets. So yeah, I think it is a little bit tougher to do that when the commissioner of MLS has explicitly said that their next targets for expansion are all USL cities already. So I do think it makes it kind of tough because now it's like race against time. Like, you better be in a good position by the time MLS shows up, or you're going to go the way of Loyal.
Okay. All right. So now that we've gotten our QOD out of the way, time to talk about the championship. And like I said, Kaylor, if you and Phil and everybody there at the USL show do not pursue this as a t-shirt and gear, we probably will do it ourselves here at SDH for the championship.
I think the paneling on ESPN2 on the score bug even said championship. So we're not saying they're listening, but just saying.
All right. So takeaways from the wacky craziness that happened at Patriots Point, where I guess it's safe to say that Phoenix now owns both California and South Carolina.
I mean, the right coast and the left coast. Yeah, like they own both coasts now. If it's not a coastal team, they don't want it. And look, it was one of the most fun finals I've watched in a long time. Stenberg getting a header or a follow goal where eventually, as people are walking in right now, hi, hello, what are you looking for? Nice.
Yes.
Basically, I'm in a meeting. It's okay. So it's a flu game. They have a flu game, and it's kind of crazy to think about of like feeling that bad, not basically eating or drinking because you're dying and then getting a goal. And it's just absolute craziness to get the cardiac kids back in it into the 90th minute. It's wild.
All right. So Phil, how does a headbutt not be a headbutt?
A good question. I talked on the USL show this week that Carlos Harvey is maybe the luckiest player in USL, in that there's a decent argument for him being sent off in each of the matches in the playoffs. And he somehow avoids it. Just one of those players, I guess, that rides that line. Yeah, I mean, he was definitely taking his fate in his own hands by making the decision like that, and it was a little surprising that there wasn't further sanction, especially given the fact that he then kind of subsequently screams at Emilio Acaza for the penalty that wasn't a penalty, and all of that. So yeah, Carlos Harvey probably can count himself a little lucky, but he kind of encapsulates the fact that this Phoenix team, they thrive on being the villain. They thrive on sucking the air out of each of these venues that they go. And yeah, I guess I said this on the show as well. Just never underestimate Phoenix's ability to be the villain. And they did it throughout this playoffs, and they successfully harnessed whatever that energy was and got it done in the end.
And Rocco Rios Novo Kaylor is basically, and this is the Google search for today, kids, the Snidely Whiplash mustache. And the only thing that's missing, I'm carrying Phil's idea of a heel forward here, to where the only thing missing is like the long coat and maybe the Van Dyke and the pointed hat. I mean, Rocco had the Snidely Whiplash thing going all the way through that shootout.
Rocco, it was so much fun to watch. As we have said several times, it was the best worst shootout of all time. And like Phil had one of the funniest tweets I think I saw of it, which was, "Can someone please take this seriously?" And it was, but Rocco just ice in his veins. I mean, Phil even said it on the show. Sorry to steal your thunder, Phil, but like how nonchalant he gets up and just doesn't celebrate, and just Devin was just like, Phoenix win.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was one of the weirder endings, and it was just no celebration, just get up and just wait for everybody to run at him. It was so fun to watch. And Rocco was fun. And one thing that I saw with Rocco was because he's a shorter goalkeeper, he's so agile across his line. He wasn't really guessing towards the end. He was just reading because he has the agility to do so. And frankly, some of them were pretty bad penalties. And even the one, I can't remember who pushed it wide, the first miss, Rocco had it covered. If it was on target, he saves it anyway. I don't think it matters that he misses.
Leland Archer? Is it Leland Archer?
Yeah, that was Leland Archer. And he saves it. Rocco was easily man of the match for me, just how solid he was. I mean, he had big saves throughout that entire game that I think, I wouldn't say another goalkeeper because there's good goalkeepers in the USL, but if you had the average USL goalkeeper, they're down, 2-3-0 in that game.
So, Phil, we talk about the shootout in and of itself and Rocco being Rocco. And I think it got lost in the broadcast that there was Atlanta United 2 on Atlanta United 2 crime with Chris Allen and the PK going up against Rocco Rock. And so that evens things up into the fifth. When we get to the fifth, when you look at this season from 30,000 feet, and Kaylor, I'll ask you the same thing, but Phil gets to answer first. When you look at the season from 30,000 feet, what sticks in your mind about the lovable chaos that is the USL Championship?
Gosh, that's a great question. I mean, I guess it ended in much the way that we talk about what is to love about this league, which is that there are those moments. There's a lot more stories in the league than we maybe get credit for. People don't necessarily talk about the fact,
See, now the chaos was there for you, Kaylor, and it blew Phil out.
Wow.
Phil, what happened? What did you do?
I don't know. I got an incoming call and it nuked me.
Did Kaylor's folks come and get to you next as they get to you first? To Kaylor?
They drove really fast.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So anyways, I think the thing about the Atlanta United 2, Chris Allen, and I'm thinking maybe Rocco, maybe he had the inside track on Allen's penalty preferences.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess viewing it from zoomed out this season, I think the biggest thing is that it is no longer just the league of, oh, it's crazy and there's kind of questionable quality and all that sort of stuff. I think the thing that's been so exciting about this year in the championship is the fact that the quality has come on so far, in leaps and bounds in the year, even since 2019 when we had a big round of expansion and everything. I think that for me has been the funnest thing to watch. And just from a tactical standpoint, you watch two managers in Ben Pierman and Juan Guerra go up against each other, and it's a chess match. It's not, hey, we're lumping it forward to the big guy up front or anything like that. You've got Charleston playing this, sort of this back three, back five system, playing on the counter, whereas Phoenix is trying to possess the ball a lot and trying to play through the lines. And I think just that, in the way that the USL had been previously, where even Phoenix, in some of the heyday under Rick Chance was, hey, lump it up to Adam John and just put it on the big guy's forehead. Now to see the way the league's progressed from a tactical standpoint, from a quality standpoint, that for me has been the biggest and most fun thing to watch this year.
Okay, since Kaylor apparently, I thought Kaylor, were you going to put a sign on the door saying knock before you come in?
No, these kids are just raised in a freaking barn and just left my door wide open. So I just sprinted and go, come on. Not only am I sitting in here telling you leave, you walk in and leave the door open.
Nice.
Rude.
All right. So let's have.
I hope they see this. I hope you see this and feel bad.
All right. All right. So let's have some fun. We'll go through the extremes of the season. And what I'll do is I'll count 3, 2, 1. You give me your answer, and then we'll discuss why you said what you said. And you can go ahead and blurt it out all at the same time because that's what I want to do here, and I want to cause an argument between the two of you. All right. So biggest success story in USL Championship this season in 3, 2, 1, go.
Armanakis.
Charleston.
All right. Kaler, why?
Wait. Sorry. Panos. No, wait. Is that his last name? Oh my gosh, now I'm messing up.
Armanakis. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it was
you're right.
Armanakis. I was getting Arteaga and Armanakis. Armanakis, Panos comes over and just rekindles what he was kind of supposed to be. He was supposed to be the next big player, and he kind of rekindles that flame. When earlier a couple weeks ago you asked me the best newcomer of the league, as soon as I got off, that was my answer. As soon as I got off the call, I was like, it was Panos Armanakis. And I think personal success, I mean, if you talk about club success versus player success, I just can't overlook over Armanakis and just him refinding himself as a player and showing why he was so hyped from a young age.
All right, Phil, why?
Charleston, one of the worst teams in the USL last year. They go out and they get Ben Pierman, give him the keys organizationally, like they knew what they wanted to do, and they turn it around. It's the biggest turnaround in USL history, and from a points standpoint. And the fact they make a final, obviously they get a little bit of help from some of the lower seeds in the East doing some work for them in the playoffs, but to make it to the final the year after, a terrible season. It's like Phoenix, rebound from not making the playoffs to making the final. Charleston made it from being like cellar dwellers to making a final. And I think like the organization deserves a lot of credit for knowing what they wanted to do, going out, getting their guy, and letting him build the team that he needed to get to accomplish what they wanted.
All right. So biggest disappointment in 3, 2, 1, go.
El Paso Locomotive.
Our own clubs.
All right, Kaler, go for it. Why?
So much talent. Just so much talent. And it ends up looking okay because they get through Tampa Bay. But I think going through 2 separate months of being completely winless is disappointing, especially when you look at names on the roster, which should be all-time attacking talent. I think at total tally between all 5 strikers, Legion, like frontline players, they have a combined 250 goals scored in the USL. And they go through 2 different completely winless patches. It's just disappointing.
All right, Phil, why?
Honestly, similar seasons from Locomotive and Legion, I think, in that there was a stretch of time where it's looking like, 12 games unbeaten, including like wins on the road in Louisville, some really like quality wins from Locomotive. You're thinking like, okay, this is a team that can compete at the top of the West. And they just ran out of gas, completely just couldn't compete. They get absolutely shellacked in Phoenix, 5-0, and it just totally derailed their season, no pun intended. Ending the season, like Lucho Soloniak ends as the top scorer with 9 goals, and his last goal came, if I'm not mistaken, in July. 3 months of the season pass and no one surpassed that total, despite a bunch of games. So yeah, just a brutal season. And I think sort of exposed Locomotive's approach, which was like 14 first team quality players and sort of 8 guys making it up the numbers in depth and not being able to carry that through a whole championship season, which is brutal when the 34 game season is no joke to carry through with a small roster. So hoping that they learn that lesson this offseason, but we'll see.
El Paso is personally disappointing to me because they ruined my wedding day. Thanks a lot. I decided to get married, and then El Paso was like, how about we win like 1-0 or 2-1, whichever one it was. All I know is I leave my wedding venue and I see that Legion lost. I'm like, thanks a lot, Phil. This is your fault.
All right. So yes, we blame them all. Morning, Harry. Thanks for hanging out with us for the weekly drop with our friends at the USL Show on the 280 character app. Most underrated talent in the USL Championship in 3, 2, 1, go.
Recency bias. I'm going to say Formella. Dude goes from Oakland, where he finished as the top goal scorer for Oakland, despite being traded mid-season, which is wild. Why are they screaming out there? I don't know. And I guess they really like my answer. And goes and becomes a playoff superstar, where he's not going to get the flowers that I think he deserves for Phoenix. I think they're going to name 5 or 6 players before you ever get to Formella.
Yeah.
Super underrated, and I really rate him as both a striker option and a cam option, where I think that gets lost in the mix.
I think I've given Phil a headache by asking him this.
The amount of players that bounce around. I'm going to go with a player that had an impact on the final in Nick Markanek from Charleston. And this is no shade to Mike and Devin, and I talked on the USL show about it, but during the broadcast, they sort of highlighted the absence of Fidel Barajas and linked it to, and Markanek is in there, and we'll see like what he can do in Fidel's absence. Markanek's been there all season. He made 29 appearances in the regular season for Battery, 11 goal involvements in sort of a fluid attack where he fulfilled a bunch of different roles, whether it was like up top, like you saw in the final. He played on the wing some. He played, he really developed along in a lot of different ways for. And I think he was sort of that go-to guy across, availability of different players. Markanek was a solid option for Pierman all season. And 9 goals, 2 assists. And I think there's more to come from him. You can see from that finish in the final, he's just got some instinct in front of goal, and I'm excited to see what he can do next. And a product of, I'm from the Chicago suburbs, and he's a product of Northern Illinois University. So, for any Huskies out there, I'm sure they're enjoying Markanek's rise.
It is pronounced DeKalb in Illinois. It is DeKalb here in the Atlanta area. Okay. Biggest disappointment, and it could be a player or a franchise in 3, 2, 1, go.
I'm going to once again go to Oakland. Where they start off, where I'm thinking they could be a real title contender with what they're doing defensively. Paul Blanchette playing out of his skull, and then they get rid of Formella, who again ends as their leading goal scorer despite not playing for them since July. They were on such a good track, and I understand why they did the trade. They needed more depth. I get it, but they were on a good track to be real playoff contenders because defense travels, and I didn't get it. I was so disappointed by their decision.
Biggest disappointment, Phil, would be whom or what?
Man, this is going to sound stupid because they went to a conference final, but I think it's Louisville. And that's purely based off of the regular season performance. I mean, they're inevitable once it comes to the playoffs. They will go to the conference final. That's just written in their, whatever expansion agreement they had with the USL when they first joined up. But for them to finish so low in the conference, I think they expected to be fighting up there with Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay. They certainly didn't expect to finish behind the likes of Charleston. And I think in general, they've lost. It seems like they've lost a little, and this could be anecdotal just based on what I see on the Bird app, but it does seem like they've maybe lost a little connection with the fan base to a certain extent. I mean, Lynn, obviously when it opened, lots of excitement. It doesn't feel necessarily like the fortress you would expect it to be. So I fully expect Louisville to bounce back in terms of, challenging at the top of the East again next year. But it does seem like they have a little bit of work to do and there are other teams that have sort of caught up to or surpassed them a little bit with what Charleston did in particular. And maybe that's a bit of a wake-up call to Louisville that they can't just keep the status quo and hang with the big boys by default.
Another couple of minutes here with Kaylor Hodges and at Phil Talks Footy from the USL show on the 280 character app. Team with the biggest upside going into 2024, all things being equal in 3, 2, 1, go.
Tampa.
Sac Republic.
All right. Why Tampa? Why Tampa?
Because they retained pretty much everybody. and they got their coach, which we talked about last week. Breaking news! Whoa, that was crazy. Which is basically just Neil Collins. It looks just like they are like, we got Neil Collins back to coach the team that Neil Collins brought in, and they've, like I said, they brought back just about everybody, and they're Tampa Bay. They're going to pull in some crazy free agents. I think they're set up for some real success.
And you mentioned Sack. Trevor Ammon goes from Northern Colorado Hailstorm. The Rich just keep adding folks, Phil.
Yeah, that signing combined with the fact that they have a ton of stability in terms of returning players this offseason. You plug a guy like Amon into an attack that already has Russell Cicerone, plus the deliveries from the likes of Gurr, Villader, Keko. I mean, these are guys that are just very high quality already to begin with. And the only thing scarier than Sac Republic, as they have been over the last couple of years, is Sac Republic with a volume goal scorer. I just don't see how Briggs doesn't take them from strength to strength this offseason. And with the addition of Amon, it just feels like, sort of exactly what the doctor ordered. If you could look for a weakness in that Sac team, like that's kind of it. And they went out and addressed it less than 24 hours after the final whistle of the championship final.
Yep, it's like championship final. I'll show you a championship final, and you make the big signing out of the blocks with the reigning Golden Boot leader in League One. Harry comes in this morning. Loudoun United, he says, watch out for them. In his opinion, could be the new Phoenix rising out of the East. They got to they got to lock some folks in, and they've got to add some scores.
Yeah, I mean, I like the direction that they're going. I think they could be sneaky good next year. I was really bought into the program that they were doing this year, and they started off as hot as they can be. Fell off towards the end. It kind of happens with a super young squad. They only had, I think, 3 people on the entire roster older than me, which super young. 34 game season, that's a lot to ask. I think next year if they can grow with this team, I could see it.
Lost by a margin of 8-2 in their final 4 games. Phil, what do you think about Loudoun? I mean, minus 25 in goal difference last year. They've got to make that up.
Yeah, I think there's a way to go for them, but I do like the fact that they leaned on youth. I think they probably need to go out and they haven't, for me, made those signings that you see from people that are going to challenge for more so playoffs, of going out and maybe grabbing a couple of established veterans, some bigger names, and really guys who can bring that team through a full season and turn some of these like inconsistent good performances into more consistently good performances.
All right, subtle plug, Kaler, before you go out, and make sure that individuals that leave doors open for conferences aren't properly given detention. So hit the plug for me about what you guys are up to next.
Just hit 4K followers on the USL show on the Dying Bird app, which is neat. And a real big revitalization of our kit season show. Can't tell exactly what the partnership is yet, but some big stuff in the works so if you're big into the fashion side of footy, we got something big on the horizon.
Oh, well, okay. That's what we call in the industry a tease here, as at the USL show is now being broadcast in 4K on the 280 character app. Phil, as always, thanks for hanging out with us from El Paso, the West Texas town. It's out in the West Texas town of El Paso. Okay, there we go. Got the lyric right. Thank you, Marty Robbins. And Kaler, as always, now go out and make sure that folks close doors behind them when you're in a conference, okay?
They're not going to.
There you go. We'll catch up with you guys next time, and we'll catch up with you soon. Thanks a lot, y'all.
Thanks, John.
There we go. There's Phil and Kaler. Kaler's going to make sure that folks stay out